Hey everyone, welcome to the latest installment of MSP Business School. I'm Brian Doyle.
Tim McNeil.
And I'm Rob Rogers.
Damn glad to meet you. And we're here today doing a little bit of a roundtable, but we've decided to have a little fun today. You know, we talk a lot about, all the topics that we cover, different people's in the industry's lives, their moments of success. Obviously we get some vendor ideas in here, and then we love to do our roundtables where we're trying to teach something. Today, we're going to teach something probably by accident, but we're going to share some of the sales war stories that we've had out in the field because God love it, man. They're great. And also, I think we've all had those struggles out in the field. And from those stories, I'm sure you'll find some different tactics you can use. But we decided to have a little fun today and just talk about some of those moments that really hurt. And then some of those moments that really made us happy in life. So with that, guys, I don't know who wants to take this first.
I don't know, Rob, you want it first or?
Okay, I'll go first. Let's see. All right. So back in my pharmaceutical sales days, this is a long time ago, way back in the day. I was doing a product and I was with a cardiac surgeon. And that day, I happened to bring one of the corporate lawyers with us who was doing a ride along with me. I was pretty good at my job. And so anytime they had corporate ride alongs, they would always put them with me. And this day they had just like a corporate muckety muck lawyer, and he was with me and just like dressed to the nines, just like very, very expensive suit and, very polished. And, so I'm going and I'm talking to this, this surgeon, and I'm doing a lunch and learn with him and him and his whole staff, and I'm explaining the the pharmaceutical that we're talking about, and he interrupts me, shuts me down, and says, "I don't talk to sales reps in cheap suits," and gives his business card to the corporate lawyer next to me and says, "I like the style of your jibe." Gives him his card and says, "Hey, do you ever want to play golf with me?" Worst thing that ever happened to me. And like they searched, and I was just sitting there, and I was just like, "Whoa, this just happened to me." And the lawyer, he was a younger guy too, right? He a younger guy. He was probably in his early 40s at the time, late 30s, and he just looked at me, and his eyes were kind of wide, but he took the card. He took the card and put it in his pocket. I was like, and we got out to my car later, and he goes, "Is that what it's like all the time?" And I was like, "Well, with that guy, yeah." That guy is just like that. That was probably one of the worst experiences I ever had.
I love that because, there's a reality about being a young salesperson, especially when we all started, because it was all about suits and ties.
Yeah.
I worked for this boiler room when I got started, and we all had to dress like we were IBM every day. And there was a lot of critical conversation if you didn't have a suit, at least of a certain quality level,
yes, yeah,
which I did not know when I first got the
Me
job,
either, Brian.
right?
Me either.
And you're also selling to somebody that's got a little bit more successful career than you at that stage.
Yeah.
You gotta have a little forgiveness. That's if you got a young sales rep in the room, he's just getting started or she's just getting started. There's only so much money in the clothing budget.
Yeah.
Hugo Boss was not on my list when I was 26.
Yeah, that was hardcore parkour for old Robbie boy.
Yeah, I would go the other way. In what world does anybody wear a suit anymore?
Well, that's today, right?
That's today, man.
But if you go back to the unfortunately now me and Rob will date ourselves, right? But you go back to the late 90s, early 2000s, man. It was suit time all the time. I wore a suit religiously till almost 2014. Man.
Yeah, my first position out of college was at Northwestern Mutual. It was an epic failure in every way, shape, and form. And one of the reasons I knew that I was not built for the insurance world is because I had to wear a suit and tie every day, which I kind of got used to. But the reality was I got scolded for loosening my tie and rolling my sleeves up while I was in the office making phone calls. And that was the day I knew that Northwestern Mutual was not for me.
I'm gonna hit you with two quick ones that go with that. So you talk about the dress expectations in the past. when I was working at this boiler room and it was all suit and tie, we had this one guy, good looking guy, right? And he comes in and he's wearing a meticulous blazer, vest, and slacks. Looked better than half the people in their suits. And he got thrown out of the office by our VP, who said, "We don't wear weekend wear here."
Yeah. Yep.
And I'm like, he looks better than half the guys in this room right now, but
Yeah.
he got, booted out. But that, that suit and tie thing was a big part of life for a long time. It's kind of converted into the blazers and jeans as the dress up mode. But the truth is, if you didn't dress well, or at least, look, I'm not going to talk about the dollar or the suit back in those days, but if you didn't come in, it was dressed to impress. That first impression was a totally different game back then. And it's, I'll sound like the old timer. That's the one thing I miss, though, because, it did kind of set you apart if you came in the room and you looked professional and you hit it that way. I saw good things happen. So Tim, you've given your worst story about that. I'm going to dovetail, and the second thing I want to dovetail off of is, so my first incredible failure was at MetLife, not Northwest Mutual. And I was selling life insurance. It was actually an internship I had during college. And I remember coming into it, they made me write a list of 200 friends and family. And that was now my prospecting list.
Project 200.
And then when I got through that 200 friends and family, I was giving the cross street reference guide. Younger guys will not know this. There was actually a book where you'd be able to look at where people live. So I would look at a map and then I would look at a book. And what I was looking on the map for was, with the cross street reference guide that I was given the obituaries. And I was told to look at the obituaries, see where that person lived, and then call all their neighbors on the street parallel and the street they live on. Because there's probably a lot of people thinking about life insurance right now. And that's when I knew I could not do that for a living. Because I called up a few people who, as soon as I started talking, just broke out into tears, man. And I'm just like, this is just, it's one thing to prey on misfortune, but
not
this
for
is
me.
A little dark for my tastes.
No. Nah.
So that was one of my first horror stories. Tim, what else you got?
I had a guy I was a recruiter in the insurance and financial planning world after I left Northwestern Mutual and used to fly all around. You mentioned MetLife. That's why I thought of it. We used to represent MetLife almost, not exclusively, but pretty close. And this guy, Denver, we're out, whatever, where we used to meet people at the hotels, like in the lobby. And it was kind of weird, but it worked. This guy almost fought me at the hotel because he didn't want to go work for MetLife. And I was like, well, dude, we're just having a conversation. Like, you don't have to go work there. If you're that adamant, I don't want you. And I know they're not going to want you either. So, but he legitimately almost fought me because I was representing MetLife. I was like, dude, I didn't piss in your Cheerios, man. I'm just trying to play somebody. That's it. You like the guy.
There's a 2-letter word that you could have used when I said MetLife, and it was no.
Saved yourself all this, effort.
I may have asked you why, but we probably would have ended right after that.
Yep. And
that's great.
I don't know if it's still like that, but there were a lot of people like that back in the day.
Yeah, there are people that there are just certain environments that they will not go to, and they do take a very passionate stance. I'll leave it at that, when you bring them up to them. Rob, how about you? Any other war stories?
I do have one. This one, I wasn't the best person here. So I'll preface it with that. But I was 17. I was 17. I was still in high school and I got a job at Burdines, which is now called Macy's. But I was working in the ladies' shoe department. True story. They hired me for the ladies' shoes department. So I went there. I went through training, did all my stuff, and got there my first day, Saturday. It was a Saturday. Got there, and I go up to some really old nice lady, and I was like, did my little thing, and she's like, I'd like to try on these shoes right here. So I go to the back. It's my very first sell. And I go to the back, I get her shoes, and she sits down, and you're supposed to put the shoe on her, you help her put the shoes on. Well, she didn't have socks on, right? And she says, you're going to need to get me a footie. And I I didn't even understand what that meant. I was so new. And so like, she explained to me, she pointed, and I was like, oh, I didn't even know we did that. And so, I give it to her, and she says she can't reach. So
Good.
I have to put
Good.
this footy on
Good.
this
Good.
old lady, right? And I did it. Okay. I straight faced. I didn't do anything, rude or anything, but I put this footy on the lady. I put the shoes on her. She loved them. I complimented her. She was like, that's great. She, I put them back in the box. I took her footies off of her. Oh, it was terrible. I gave the box to the other sales rep standing right next to me and said, I'm going to lunch. And I never came back. 17 years old. I was not Al Bundy. I couldn't do it. I was
So
out.
I don't have war stories there, but there's another similarity, Rob. I worked at Baker Shoes in the mall for almost a year and a half, man. And I was
Really?
Al Bundy, bro. So
I couldn't do it.
So far we've learned that the path to technology apparently is shoe stores and insurance agencies. But I'm going to hit you with one of my war stories now. So when I first started, really professionally, I worked for an agent, carrier agent. And this was the early days of carrier agents as well. So a lot of customers just didn't understand the difference between the carrier and what an agent was, right?
Mhm.
And we were drilled during our sales training to make sure that we represented ourselves as XYZ company and agent for XYZ carrier, right? It was that kind of thing. So fast forward, it's a snowy day. It's not great weather, and I'm doing a ride along with my manager. I'm probably 4 weeks into being a sales rep. I'm not talking sales rep for this company. I'm talking sales rep in my life, right? And we ride out to this meeting, and I've got my little calendar with me, right? And my calendar's got all my customers and all that back in the day. And we walk into this meeting, and the lady we're supposed to meet with isn't there yet, right? So we sit in the lobby, and all of a sudden this woman comes through the door, and you could tell she's having the morning of mornings, right? Whether it's car got stuck, shoveling the snow, kids late for school, she came in, her hair's wet, she's disheveled, she's miserable, and she's fit to be tied, right? And they bring it. So we go into her, and of course, this is who we're meeting with, right? And we go into the office. And we introduce ourselves, and I say, hey, I'm Brian Doyle, and this is, Robb XYZ. And we're from XYZ agency representing XYZ carrier. The room falls silent. And she goes, you MNFers misrepresented yourself to get in here. I thought you were the carrier. I just killed myself to get here to hold this meeting. I want zero part of working with you, and just read me up and down in front of my boss. You think that's bad, though? Now we leave. I get out to the car, I drive to my office, and I realize I've now left my date book behind.
Oh, nice.
He had me, I was so worked up. I'm 4 weeks as a rep that I left my book behind, and she called up everybody for my next 3 days and told them not to meet with me. I thought I was getting fired. Thought I was done.
Oh, okay. So that's where things go sideways for me.
Yeah, and I thought my sales career was over just like that. Fortunately, I worked in an organization where they just decided to make fun of me for the next 2 years. And I worked there and because we knew what we were, and there was stuff like that. But it was after that, you can make sure that every time I left a room, I was looking around. Do I have all my stuff? Never so happy when we got smartphones and my calendar was no longer in a book. But that was one of my worst sales stories, because this woman was definitely not happy.
Could you
with
imagine
us
being
and with
so
life.
miserable?
So
that
mad.
You take time out of your day to just absolutely ruin somebody's sales career 4 weeks in. Like that is some next level bitch right there.
And you know what though? It happens, right? Everybody's got their axe to grind. You don't know who the guy was that made her feel this way before that, right? Maybe there was an experience with one of my competitors that led her to believe this way. But woo, that was a hot one. Well, hey, let's maybe transition into some of the.
I got a question for you, Brian.
Sure. Yeah, no, bring it on.
All right, I got a question for you. What was your first job? Did you have a job in high school?
Oh yeah, my first ever job was washing dishes. I washed
Really? For
dishes
where?
at a restaurant called Steak and Sword.
And how long did you make it there?
I was there for a year and a half until I was finally old enough, because I started working there under the table before I was 16.
There we go.
Old
And
enough
there it
to
comes.
old enough to get a real job. And my
Huh.
first real job was working at the mall selling shoes.
Oh, the shoe store. What was it, like a Foot Locker
No,
type of
no,
thing?
it was Baker's shoe store. My mother knew the lady that ran it, and it was a woman's only shoe store.
Oh, wow. Okay. So you
Oh,
made it.
wow.
Wow. Okay.
And I
Okay.
worked there for almost 2 years.
Wow. Good
Actually
for you.
made some good commissions there. I'm not gonna lie.
They
Yeah.
made good commissions, not me. I didn't make
Really?
good commissions there, turns out.
Yeah. Well,
Well, you didn't make it long enough to get a check.
Yeah, I went to lunch and never came back.
yeah. Checks in the mail.
Yeah. Now, how about you? What was your first job?
My first job, my very first job, I started a lawn mowing business. I built up these flyers and I mowed lawns with our little bitty push lawnmower, like all over the neighborhood. And that was how I paid for my car. That was my very first job. And that was from 14 years old to 15 years old. And then once I turned 16, I went to go work at a fast food restaurant. And I worked at that fast food restaurant for about a year and a half, right? Like all through high school. And I did night shift. But yeah, I did. I liked that. It was Hardee's is what I worked at.
Nice.
Oh,
Yeah, it was back in
about you,
Florida,
Tim?
Florida times.
How about you? Where did you truly cut your teeth?
My first was I don't even know what I was considered, service rep, maybe. I used to, I was grew up in Rochester, so I used to go to all the Home Depots in Rochester, Syracuse, eventually Buffalo too. And I was the molding guy. Used to work for Alexandria Molding, based out of Alexandria, Ontario. My brother actually worked for the company at the time. It was one of his first jobs out of college, and he brought me on because they couldn't find anybody to stick. And I was, I was like, I don't know, I was in high school. I was making, at the time, it was like $15 an hour. I was getting per diem every day for, I had a meal allowance and they'd pay my mileage. It was awesome. I loved it. And I was dealing with a bunch of, for the most part, I was dealing with the managers, like the head manager of any of these Home Depots. And for the most part, they were all
too nice of a first job.
Yeah,
well,
that's
it
kind of
was,
BS.
it was
very,
very
Rob,
manual.
I didn't go back where you were, but I cut lawns and delivered papers as really my first job. Before that, first real job in a building was dishes. I certainly wasn't out schmoozing managers.
Oh,
Yeah,
well,
I was
okay.
per diem. I couldn't even explain what a per diem was.
I don't think I knew what that word was until I was in my 30s.
Yeah. After I had to deal with the manager, I had to put away pallets of molding that were, 3,000-4,000 pounds.
Oh yeah.
That's where it went sideways.
Now I like to hear that, because after my time at Baker's Shoes, I had some warehouse time.
Yeah.
And then I went into waitering and bartending, and but I think if you get a theme on what's going here, working in shoes, selling shoes, working as a waiter and bartender, these are all skills that are transferable to the sales realm, right? There's always an upsell somewhere in there. The only difference is no prospecting of those other two.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. That is true.
My favorite job was waitering and bartending. I think everybody should either have to join the Peace Corps, join the Army, or be a waiter for 2 years. You learn so many skills and learn how to deal with people, being a waiter.
You get patience.
You do get patience.
Maybe.
Yeah.
But
is that why I have none?
Yes, well, guys, that's exactly it.
We just spent a lot of time on war stories, so maybe we'll do sales successes next time.
Okay.
But let's kind of close out. What was the one lesson you learned from your war story, right? Because we just shared a couple different ones. What was the lesson you learned that you were able to carry into your career later? And if it helps, I'll kick this one off.
Okay.
Yeah. 2 things I learned from the 2 things I shared. Selling the cross, basically reading the obituaries and then selling to the people around the streets. did teach me that you got to seize opportunity where opportunity lives. You may not want to do it in the macabre format that I was being asked to do. But unfortunately, if you really look at the tech industry, a lot of the greatest sales come out of unfortunately, a company's misfortune. Something bad has happened or failed, and that's the door that helps me open it. So what you got to remember is while the misfortunes happen, have a little bit of empathy when you go into that situation. Acknowledge that you understand the why, but then, tell them where you're going to push it forward. So that was what I learned from the dark side of sales. When it came to, when it came to losing my book, it really told me that don't let anybody rattle you or lose your composure. It's not that they don't like you. They just don't like what you're saying. And it took me a while to really realize it's not me they hate, it's my company. When I moved from working at an agent that had 3 initials, we'll call it XYZ, to working at AT&T, those same people that hung up on the phone when I was an agent now would take meetings with me at the new place. I was the same guy. So, for salespeople, remember, a lot of times it's got nothing to do with you. It's the message you're selling isn't the one resonating with them on that day. And if you go somewhere else, it might be better. So that's my cheery optimism coming out of some more stories.
Yeah.
Tim, how about you with what you approached at MetLife?
Honestly, I mean, I would say oddly similar from the state. We were an independent recruiting firm, right? And we did represent other companies, but MetLife happened to be the dominant factor. And there were definitely times where I'd have, didn't happen a lot, but I'd have multiple clients in a given territory. And I had a similar situation. The one thing I didn't like about it was you almost had to be cryptic on trying to get these meetings and have people come meet you because you don't want to give away the house because, in life and somebody wants to punch you in the face and all. But I mean, there were a lot of things that people didn't know that were under the hood that could benefit them financially. So there were people that kind of came in. Like for me, it was getting people to understand that, hey, maybe you didn't think MetLife was for you, and maybe it's not, but here are some of the really good things that they're doing. And if it makes sense for you to have a conversation, that's why I'm here, and kind of go from there. So I would say it helped me understand that you should probably be a little more open door out of the gate from a sales aspect, which I think kind of translates in a roundabout way to what we do now and what we teach MSPs on just how they need to be an open door with what they do. And I don't know, I do feel like that has translated for me personally.
Cool. How about you, Rob?
So, when, I got made fun of for my cheap suit, it taught me 2 things, really. That was the time where I really learned that, learned how to be thick-skinned. I loved that job. Pharmaceutical sales I absolutely loved it. It was everything that I wanted it to be, and it was. And I learned thick skin because when he said that to me, I realized that that was just the rudest thing that you could say to somebody, and it was highly inappropriate. And then I thought to myself, you know what? I'm better off than he is, because I only had to be around him for 3 minutes. He has to be around himself for the rest of his life. So I win. And that taught me thick skin. And that was where I had that paradigm shift in my head to where I was able to talk to strangers and not care about what they said. So that was what I did. Don't worry about jerky people. You're only around them for 3 minutes.
Yeah.
They're around themselves for the rest of their lives.
It's fair.
Yep.
It's fair.
And I think that's an unfair shot to be taken on a young salesperson. So that's
That is. People were mortified in the room.
Yep.
The nurses were mortified.
All right, guys. Well, we're at time. Audience, hopefully you have found a little fun in this today too. MetLife, we're sorry. We discouraged you. That's not our goal.
It wasn't you, it was me.
You're a wonderful company that's been taking care of people's lives through insurance for many, many years. So we thank you for being out there. Sorry you took it on the chin today with us. But that said, we'll down the road, we'll talk about some sales successes. Hope you had a little fun with us today. Hopefully it was a little break in your day, getting to hear how that bad sales story that you once had Well, you're not alone.
Well, guys, we're going to be putting this thing up on our usual places like mspbusinessschool.com, but also YouTube. So, if you guys found this one enjoyable, throw a comment. I would love to hear somebody else's horror stories in the comments on YouTube. Just to, kind of, no kidding, right? Just, let us know how it happened to you. Where did you learn, to kind of make your pivot in sales as well? But Brian, Tim, this one, brought back some memories.
Yeah.
I'm going to get
Yeah.
a little sad there.
Tim's got to go to work, so let's let him go to
All right.
work, and we'll see y'all next week.
All right, take care.